Hello teacups, what's brewing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. A little bit different today. We're going to talk about Chantal for just a moment. As you know, she had a very brief divorce arc going. I use the term divorce very lightly. Basically, I woke up and they were over. And then by the time I hit, I think, second period, it was all fine and they were together again. So given that it all ended up being a little bit of a, what's the phrase? Tempest in a teacup? Sort of appropriate for the channel, I suppose. Ended up being a bit of a tempest in a teacup, and yeah, so it blew over. It didn't seem worth its own individual video, and I didn't have any massively hot takes from it, other than I think she should be a little more careful, just because we know how she gets when she is angry. We have seen, I'm not defending Nada by any means at all, but we have seen the kind of stuff she sent to him. We've seen the kind of stuff she sent to Dee. We've seen her rage online for a literal year about all of this. And when she gets impulsive, she gets very, very mouthy. And the thing is, the balancing to that, the ballast on the other side that stops her from blowing away everybody all at once, is that she has a certain amount of control over them, usually financially. And so that's the balancing power there. It's like, okay, no, I'm awful, but you're also reliant on me. And she sets up a lot of her relationships like that. Now, Salah is doing his own job over in Kuwait, and their relationship, or the promise of their relationship, as much as they say it's love, seems to be very much he wants to come to Canada and they were going to start up a couples channel, and she wants to say she's married and she has somebody. So there were benefits for both. However, with the bankruptcy arc and the fact that she's still doing like home cooking and stuff, I know she's had a few things out, but it seems to be weighing on her. Like whatever they've told her seems to be an issue, and she seems to be very low on cash. So I don't think she's in a position, even if it had been dismissed, which it wasn't, sorry, not dismissed, discharged. For those of you who didn't follow, I think all of you did, but her trustee objected, and now she's still talking about budgets and all of that. So clearly it's still going on. Somebody, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't know who it was. Somebody on Twitter, that I'm sure I reposted it if you go and check Twitter, posted a video about the process of how people might be asked to repay in bankruptcy, and how over a certain amount, I think it was very high, I think it was like 2,600 or something, you might have to make payments on what's known as excess income, I believe it was. The video was actually quite well done. It explained it quite well. I had some examples and I was like, oof, that's going to be a problem. So she could really be facing quite strict bills right now. And, you know, she wants to go back to Kuwait. She's been low on money for a while. She doesn't have the spending power she used to have, is the point I'm making. And even without all the legal wrangling and all the fact that I still don't believe for a single second they're married, and therefore she doesn't have the relationship to sponsor him in the way like as a spouse or anything. Simply put, she no longer pays enough for people to put up with her shit. So when she comes and she starts insulting, and she did say in these deleted videos that she called him a pig and a coward, he's much less likely to stand for that, because he's not as dependent on her, and she's not in as strong a position in any sense as she was when she tried this with other people in her life. With Peetz, he is pretty dependent on her, and Peetz is actually why we're here. We're going to be reacting to him today, of all people. Like Nada, although the power balance was very different in terms of the abuse, when she came into the picture financially, he was dependent on her. So there was a lot going on in that relationship, but money was a factor in it. I think ultimately, Foodie has this idea that yes, the relationships we start might have more of a transactional nature, but if they give me that chance, and if they actually meet me and get to know me, they'll fall in love with me, and it'll end up being the romance I've always dreamed of. And I think we saw her trying to do that with Nada, and I think she wants to do that with Salah. I have never gotten the impression from their interactions, no matter what they've been saying, that there's any closeness between them that's anything other than an arrangement. The fact is, whatever expectation may have been on the other side of this in terms of what she would be able to do for him now doesn't seem possible. So I would be super careful how you insult someone, because the ties that bind are not so strong. But as I say, that's not actually why we're here today. That's all I really had on Foodie, so it wasn't worth its own video. But moving on with the kind of financial conversation, because I'm a numbers girl, the situation with Peetz is happening at the moment. So I did get a clip of, well, she's called it Peetz Meltdown, but his discussion about moving in with his mom, which he's planning to do at the end of the month, from a channel called Piggy, I think it was called. It got suggested in my homepage. I don't usually use them for clips, but the channels I usually use didn't seem to have this, so here we are. Thank you very much for clipping it. We have briefly mentioned Peetz before and talked a little bit about the situation he finds himself in, but we are going to go into this again, so I'm just going to get this started so it doesn't end up being too long.
I could be cooking for much longer because odds are good I am probably going to end up moving in with my mom, who has a tiny little nothing of kitchen. But I feel like I'm probably not going to, honestly, I don't know that I'll be live very often at all once I'm there. I'm gonna be fucking miserable. Cook for my mom. Her kitchen's nothing. Like, it's a shitty kitchen she's got, honestly.
I've heard Peetz talk about this before when he mentioned he was going to be moving in with his mom, and he's been incredibly negative about all of it. As I've said before, I go back and forth on the Peetz situation. On one hand, I think anybody with half a brain would have looked at the last year, not even the last 3 months, although the last 3 months would have been more urgent, but looked at the last year and said, I am not secure here. I should have a plan B and C and D. Because when she was with Nada Ethan, she was calling him the ball and chain. And she was making motions about how, no, you know, once I find this guy, I'm going to be with him, and Peetz and I are platonic. We can't spend our whole lives together. And that to me should have been enough. Now, I can't actually remember how long Peetz has been unemployed. It's been a little while now. Because one of the things with the last 3 months, yes, it should have been a case of, okay, I need to have a backup plan, use these 3 months to get myself in a stronger position. He's also been unemployed for the last 3 months at least. So getting a job isn't always within your control. However, he could do more than he's doing. I think he's been window shopping a lot. He's applied to a few places, but not many. He hasn't like sat down and been like, apply until something comes. Because he does have mental health concerns, and I completely understand that. And there are certain jobs I don't think he would be suited for. But as we mentioned last time we discussed this, I do think that instead of looking for the perfect right job, he should be looking for right now, just to get himself in a more secure position. But the other hand to that is that however untrustworthy we find Chantal with her impulsivity, they have been friends for a really long time. And despite the fact that we've looked on in horror, at the end of the day, she's always gone crawling back to him because her other plans have never worked out. Is that a great position for him to be in as the eternal safety net? No. And she has used him whenever she's needed to. Like, he's on the lease here because she couldn't get approved by herself because of her bankruptcy, one assumes. So whenever she needs him there, she's got what she needs, and that's the important thing. But she did make certain assurances to him, whether he should have believed them or not. So she did say, pay what you're comfortable with in the apartment. And we heard of him paying the occasional bill, but she has outright said that, no, I contribute almost everything. So it wasn't regular contribution. And she had said many times, no, it's going to be Peetz and me forever, for all she had changed her mind. And given that she is so impulsive and her stuff doesn't tend to work out, and she's always come crawling back to him, it was perhaps stupid but reasonable for him to believe that this would go on practically forever. Yeah, I personally wouldn't have, but I can see, being the kind of person he is, why he did. I've gone a little bit of a tangent with that, sorry, but that is to say he's overwhelmingly negative, and the reason I went on that entire tangent is I kind of understand the anger. Whether he should or shouldn't have been in this position, she brought him into this position, and now, because her financial situation has clearly changed, suddenly is like, no, we are definitely going this time. And he was never prepared to have the cord cut. You know, even when they were going into the luxury mansion, he was coming along. And I think he did believe, maybe naively, that she would always take care of him. But now she's not in a financial position to, and she shouldn't have to, but she said she was gonna. I feel like that maybe didn't make sense, but we're gonna move on.
There's no room. I'm going to be exceptionally depressed. Well, I've got a job lined up. Like, it's something where I will probably end up getting a job at the place where my brother works now. That's probably where I'm going to end up working. Which is another thing. I will be way too tired to cook because I'm going to be working full time. So between exhaustion and having a tiny little kitchen in a one-bedroom apartment with no privacy, I probably am not going to be... I'll have my lunch breaks. Like 30 minutes. It'll be like...
Here's the issue I have here. I find this really whiny. I'm like, I'm going to be exhausted because I'm working full time. Well, welcome to adulthood. Full-time work. You do your best. You know? Yes, it's tiring. But frankly, he is in a better position than I expected him to be in. Does it suck that he, is he 40 yet? Maybe he's slightly younger. I think he's the same age as Foodie, 39 maybe. As a 39-year-old man, is having to move back in with his mom temporarily while he has an adjustment period in his life? Yes, that sucks. I'm sure it's not where he pictured he would be at this point in his life. But he has options here. If his brother is willing to get him a job wherever his brother works, that is more than he could have had. He could be homeless right now. He could have no job lined up with no end in sight to the time at his mom's. And even though he's determined to believe that's the case, he's determined to believe this is all a trap, actually, the situation he's in isn't that bad. And we're going to see why.
30-minute walk. Remember my days off? I'm going to have to stay with her for a while. Yep. Yeah, lucky me. I'm going to be able to I'll get to look for another apartment in fucking Cornwall. Be stuck there for the rest of my fucking life. I'm getting dragged back there. I'm never going to escape Cornwall, and it's fucking miserable.
This is his inner child having a tantrum right now, and also maybe a little bit of lack of emotional regulation due to the depression, which when I was struggling, I was on medication for depression, I found part of it was that kind of can't get myself out of bed, and the other part was just not being able to control my emotions well, and sometimes that meant anger and flying off the handle quite easily. And I think that's part of this, and part of it's just baby tantrum. Some of it he needs to suck up and get over, and some of it I think just a different perspective, and he might not be ready to see that would actually really help him. It can be quite a blow, especially when you're like going back to your hometown, having, even under these circumstances, gotten out, as it were. Now, if the job that he's incredibly fortunate to have lined up at this point is close to Cornwall, yeah, he might temporarily be tethered there. But his mum's also there, and I can't imagine she's getting any younger at this point. So there's something to be said for being there even temporarily. And if it's an opportunity to get him back on his feet a little bit more and a little bit more independent, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Now, I realise as I say independent, he's going to be on his mum's couch for a bit. But that means if he starts his job, I've broken down the numbers, we're going to budget in a minute. But if he's got his job and then his mom is kind enough to take care of most of the expenses while he's on her couch for, say, 2 months, he could actually set himself up pretty quickly.
She's got a one-bedroom apartment. When am I moving? End of the month? Moving at the end of the month. I've got no choice. Life for disability, me.
That was anger at Chantal there. I've got no choice, it's end of the month. Yeah, I mean, you were there for 3 months. I really think you should have seen that coming, but Chantal always said, no, I'd never abandon Peetz, I'll move him into a place. Chantal doesn't have to pay his rent for the rest of her life, but I think given the circumstances, she probably should have offered to at least help him out with the deposit, and then he'd pay her back if it came to it. But I don't think she's even got the finances to do that right now. I really don't.
Maybe. But disability barely pays. I won't be able to... disability barely pays anything, so I'd still be stuck living with my mom. In a shitty one-bedroom apartment, sleeping on her couch. What do you have to move?
This is pretty entitled. If your mom can live in that apartment and be happy, be grateful you're not on the streets right now. Be grateful.
I mean, I can't afford the rent on this place on my own. We've already agreed to leave. We've already signed the paperwork to leave this place. So, I mean, we've got Chantal. Chantal's going back to... Chantal's gonna stay with, probably gonna end up staying with her mom temporarily until she goes back to Kuwait to be with her husband. Get a place for my brother. I mean, once I've saved up some money, then yeah, that's probably what's going to end up happening. Either way, fucking stuck in Cornwall. Never getting the fuck away from Cornwall again. Internet? Well, yeah, I'll have internet access. Again, I'll be working 8-hour days plus commute time, so probably like 9.5, 10 hours a day that I'll be...
I'm gonna leave it there for a sec. So the reason I want to get to that point is he mentioned the job. So the job seems to be full-time. And let's break down some numbers here because I think he's got more possibilities than he realizes. Now, I did look at rents in Cornwall and he's right, they are kind of nuts. He can't afford $1,500 for a one-bed apartment. He can't. Yeah, not on the salary beyond. But if we did some numbers and we said, okay, let's say he worked minimum wage, because bear in mind, there's a lot more jobs for work from home now than there were pre-COVID, because people realize the benefit in doing that. So he could, if he got himself in a slightly more secure position now, and he wanted to move away from Cornwall, and he managed to get a job doing whatever he does, work from home, he could look into, if not getting a better place, at least moving into a different city if he was really anti being in Cornwall. Now, how does he do that if he can't afford rent? Well, he doesn't need to live singly, and I did check rents for this because he definitely couldn't afford to do that. But if he was earning, I'm going to say worst case scenario, minimum wage, I do believe at some point he said he was a manager on his last job. Is that true? Like, I imagine his wage would be slightly higher in that case. But if, like we say, minimum wage, which is I think just over $15 an hour in Canada, but if we take 15 as a worst case scenario, and I crunch the numbers, and basically it would mean if he was working 40 hours a week, let's say 50 weeks a year, because, 2 weeks sick, whatever, he'd be earning about $30,000 a year. Right? I looked around room rent in Cornwall, Ontario, and although the single flats were very expensive, if you get a room in a shared place, it was coming up about $600 mostly all in, like including bills and stuff, which was quite surprising. But $600, although he probably doesn't want to live in a shared house, and I get that he doesn't want to, but sometimes you've got to suck it up, buttercup. A shared room that was his would be much better for him than a couch that was his mom's. Yeah, he'd have more privacy, he'd have his own space, because in the place they're in now, he mainly kept to himself in his bedroom anyway, and at least it would be his. Smokey Steve and Mark, they might both have used this phrase, I can't remember which one of them used it first, said that he has a learned helplessness, and I would completely agree with that. He's not happy with where things are. He's not happy having to be more independent again, but he is capable. He's done it before. So he could get a rent for $600. And then I looked at the other costs he would need. So let's break this down properly. I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry. So if he was earning $15 an hour, he was earning about $30,000 a year. I then put the $30,000 a year into a salary calculator so that all the deductions would come off. That ended up with him getting net pay yearly of like $22,291 once all the deductions for Ontario were taken out. Federal tax, provincial tax, CPP, I'm guessing that's pension, and EI, which I'm guessing is employment insurance, which is like if you become unemployed, you can get a small amount, a bit like job seekers allowance in the UK, I'm guessing. So if you break that down, if you divide that by 12, that gives him $1,857 a month, yeah? So if we say 600 on rent a month, that's all in. But even if there were utilities that weren't included, I don't know if trash is included in that, I don't think water is, but things like electricity, and the rooms I looked at, some of them had Wi-Fi and stuff included as well. So, but even if they didn't and we said, okay, to look at what the other things might cost, I checked a site that shows you average living costs. I don't know how accurate it is, but they said the average utility payments were 110. If we put that in addition to the rent, just in case, to make sure we're completely safe, and then we add, if he's using the bus, because he complains in a minute about how it would be a 30 to 45 minute bus ride, Cornwall Transit does a monthly bus pass for $66. So I put $70 a month into his fixed cost for that. Groceries, they said the average was around $400. I wasn't sure if that was up to date, but when I converted how much I spend here in Oman, and Oman isn't particularly cheap, it ended up converting somewhere around there. So I think it's probably okay to use. So that'd be $400 a month. And I guess if the Wi-Fi was included in the rent, he would just need a cell phone. I ballparked $40 for it. I don't really know. So if we look at all those things, he would be spending about $1,220 a month on those expenses, on keeping everything going, on having a roof on his head, being able to live his life. Yeah? So that would leave him with $637 left for whatever in the month. Now, I do know he has credit cards, so he probably has some liability there. And he's mentioned before he'd like to pay them off a bit more. But we also know, because Foodie has admitted, that she ruined his credit. So I can't imagine that the limit on the credit card is very high, but the interest on it is probably terrible if his credit score is low. So if his limit isn't too high, maybe let's say $200 a month towards his liabilities, which would leave him with $437 a month. But that's disposable income. So for that, he could have a couple of luxuries. He could have something like, some subscriptions, something, I was going to say Netflix, but with all the things Netflix are doing right now, because the younger generation, they never learn to torrent. You just steal that stuff. But Netflix, things of that nature. And he could still, have a certain, let's say, quality of life in terms of what he likes to do. He could buy a few comics with that. He could have a subscription. He could have a few luxuries and still have a little bit of money left over. Now, if you were going to be a real life adult, you could do things like an emergency fund, like $100 into investments every month. He really does need to start putting money aside for those things, or even just $100 a month aside for saving to get into a different place if he were to increase his earning in a new job after he'd done a year or two in whatever position he was in, just natural progression up whatever line he's doing. And then maybe he could afford somewhere more independently given time. And then he'd be saved up with the first and the last month, which they need to move in, and he'd be able to make changes. Is it going to mean a pause of a year or maybe 2 years while he gets himself in a better position? Yes, it is. But is it hopeless? No. And he's not going to be stuck at his mom's if he does the bare minimum of going to a job for a month or two. Especially if it's a full-time job that his brother can get him. He can earn enough money in that time to get himself out, even into something basic, like I'm saying here. Now, I don't have a lot of experience doing traditional rentals. I did it during my master's program, but obviously I did it in the UK, I didn't do it in Canada, and the situation is different. Mostly when I get jobs, they include my rent as part of my benefits. So I don't pay rent. So I realize as I say this, there might be something really big that I'm just not thinking of that would impact his costs. But I'm saying, even though it wouldn't be the gravy train that Chantal has been, it wouldn't be eating out most days, it wouldn't be some of the things she just used to throw money at, it would be perfectly livable if he were willing to do it. And right now, the willingness to do it is being counteracted by just the petulance of being angry at the situation forcing him to do it, even though long term it's going to be better for him.
We'll end up getting a place together in fucking Cornwall, because there's no way I'm ever getting out of that fucking city anymore. I'm basically stuck in the city that I fucking hate.
he's just spiraling. It's like he's so fixed on the fact that it's Cornwall and he's going back to his hometown, he can't get his brain out of anything else. It's Cornwall, but if you do it right, if you're motivated enough by the hatred of it, and you do it right, within a year or two, it can be somewhere else.
Pumpkin. Why is Cornwall bad? It's just a shitty town. It's just a trashy town. Frankly, I'm much madder at myself. Claire, Mrs. Awa. Why am I mad at myself? Because I fucked up. Because I completely fucked up my life, Claire.
And again, that is him being a bit self-indulgent, which, given the situations, I suppose, I completely messed up my life. There were opportunities you may have missed, but your life's not over till you're dead. He does have a degree. Is his degree out of date? Yes. Could he get it updated? Yes. Or having the degree at all gives him more opportunity than not having it. I know a lot of people would argue this and the worthiness of a degree, but it's been proven over time that people who have degrees make more money than people who don't long term. I'm not saying Peetz is a great example of that, but I'm saying there's less reason for Peetz to be the way he is than there is for Chantal to be the way she is. Chantal made some choices in her life and she squandered a lot of golden opportunities, but she doesn't, because she's now been on YouTube for so long, because she's got so much online, because she was so shit at the employment she actually did. She doesn't have the option of going back to work, and Peetz does. And he's lucky enough to have a possibility there. Peetz hasn't completely screwed this yet.
Age restricted? It's supposed to be. It is supposed to be age restricted. So strictly speaking, I'm not actually supposed to stay there anyway. What would have you done differently? I mean, I should have been looking for work, or I should have, done a better job at making YouTube a career, treating YouTube as a career before now. It's just, no, I should have quit my job. Quitting my job was not a choice.
I think hindsight is 20/20 in a lot of things, and although it may not have been a smart financial decision for him, he did seem to be in a really bad place with his job, with his mental health, and Chantal was there as a cushion, however temporarily. So if he was in such a bad position with his job, you do at some point have to say, I can't anymore. But then he should have moved into something else. And he seems to realize that as well. Like, he lashes out, but I think he is also pretty aware of the mistakes he's made.
I am not spilling tea. I am not that type of person. The absolute worst can happen. Even if Chantal ended up completely disowning me, even if that happened, I would not.
He doesn't have to spill the tea on Chantal. I'd listen if he did, but I don't know how she earned the kind of loyalty from him she earned, but she's got it, and there he is.
My brother is pretty sure that I can get a job at the place where he's currently working, a place that he thinks is good. What's wrong with it is that I want to be out of fucking Cornwall. Living with my mom wouldn't be as big a deal if it was a 2-bedroom apartment. In a 1-bedroom? No, that's fucking awful. Except I need first and last month's rent, Pata. Like, I can't find a new place until I have enough money for first and last month's rent.
This is really the last bit I'm going to do because him whining about it was getting quite irritating. If he were to get a shared room at $600, he could live with his mom for a month or until he got maybe his second paycheck from the job from his brother. I'm assuming he's getting paid monthly. He might be getting paid more regularly. And if it were $600 to $650, he could definitely save that in that time for sure. So he wouldn't have to be there very long, but he's so stuck on the idea. He's like, I can't. I think he's thinking of like $1,500 to $1,700 and maybe set your expectations for where you live a little bit lower because it's still a step up from where you're going to be, and live with basic for a while longer because it will do. It will do while you work into something else. And he's not there right now at all.
I am in a situation, like, I am at a point where I don't know what the fucking point of anything is. Why didn't you say the past 3 months? Because everything I was making, I had to fucking spend. Never having enough money to do a single fucking thing to make me happy for the rest of my fucking life.
I'm going to leave this pretty much there, but again, right now he's determined that nothing can work. And so long as he's determined, even though what he'll be doing, it is actually workable, he won't see it. He's just like, no, this is it. My entire life has gone down the drain. And I'm hoping for his sake that given enough time to get over, it shouldn't have been a shock, but the shock of this actually happening and him actually having to do this with no financial support from Chantal, he'll start like getting over himself a little bit and look at his options a little more carefully. I don't think that's going to happen for a while. I think he's going to wallow in this. Okay, I'm going to leave you there. There was a bit more of the video, but it's more of the same pretty much. And we'll get back to Chantal when Chantal comes back, I suppose. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.